Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:07 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Neil Patel is with us, co-founder of The Daily Caller and the Tucker Carlson Network as well. He'll join us to discuss all of this debate about visas for immigrants to the United States happening on the right. He's got some good thoughts on this subject. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Speaking of the Tucker Carlson Network, over this Christmas break, Tucker posted a great interview with the head of the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien. You remember him? He gave that impassioned speech on behalf of unions at the Republican National Convention. And apparently, as I understand it, there were people within who were organizing the convention who wanted to change all of the wording of his speech by his own claim. He said that they really wanted to get involved and change the things that he was going to say. Maybe don't say this. Maybe say something different. And so he directly appealed to Trump. And President Trump said, oh, forget all that. You say whatever you want to say. You literally just give the speech you want to give. That's what I want. And so he did. Sean O'Brien got up there and gave an impassioned speech on behalf of unions, on behalf of especially the Teamsters. And he was not welcome to the Democrat convention at all. They refused to have him. He was hoping that they'd let him speak and be a speaker at both locations. They refused, which really tells you a lot, doesn't it? And he talked to Tucker about the sort of the tire kicking process that they went through with the candidates. They asked all of the presidential candidates, including the primary phase, to talk to the Teamsters and answer some of their questions. And there was really only one guy who was willing to do it. That was Trump. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris, well, she really didn't have much time for them. Take a listen.
So we give 16 questions 2 weeks in advance, the same 16 questions to each candidate. So, RFK answered all 16 questions. Probably most of them didn't answer them how we would like them to answer them, but they answered them. Joe Biden came in and he answered 5 of them. Donald Trump answered all 16. And then when Biden drops out of the race, but prior to Biden dropping out of the race, he's in the race around June or May. One of my vice presidents, a woman named Joan Corey out of my local, she sits on our general executive board, was at an event with Vice President Harris. And, they're going through the line to get the picture, and Joan introduces herself to Vice President Harris, says, I'm Joan Corey. I'm on the general executive board for the Teamsters. She goes, Teamsters? You better get on board. You better get on board. Better get on board soon.
Kamala didn't say how she'd fight for American workers. She didn't say she'd fight for American union workers or how Biden would do that. He was describing this was in the period where Biden had not yet dropped out. Instead, she wags her finger in the face of this Teamsters executive and said, you better get on board. This is the relationship that the top-level Democrats think they have with the unions. In fact, the way they operate, they know they have that with the unions. You better do our bidding or else. You better get on board, Sean O'Brien said. He also said that he reached out to the former labor secretary under Joe Biden, Marty Walsh, and said, who does this lady even think she is?
So I call up Marty Walsh. He wasn't the Secretary of Labor, but, he was pushing hard for us to make the endorsement. I'm like, let me ask you a question, Marty. Excuse my French. Who does this lady think she is? Like, if I want to support from any organization, I am not going to point my finger in someone's face and say, you better get on board or else. But that's the attitude of this whole party.
For sure. All the way from people like Sean O'Brien, the head of an important political operation, really, in some cases, in some sense, the Teamsters Union, and all the way down to you, whatever your station is in life. That is their attitude. You better get on board. Finger in your face. How dare you for questioning us? How dare you? Reminds me, I had an old colleague at the Daily Caller years ago, Neil Monroe, White House correspondent at the time. He's now at Breitbart News. And Neil was the only person who was standing in a Rose Garden speech where Obama announced that he was giving amnesty to broad categories of illegal aliens in the United States. He was the only person. He's an Irish immigrant. And he shouted out to Obama, why are you favoring foreigners over American workers? And Obama wagged his finger in his face. How dare you? He said. How dare you? It's the right thing to do, he said. And then similarly, Neil was at a different press conference where Eric Holder was in attendance, the attorney general at the time. And some number of lawmakers, Republican congressmen, had been calling for Eric Holder to resign. He needs to resign, he needs to resign. And they'd been sharing this with Daily Caller reporters. In particular, at the time, it was Matt Boyle, who, by the way, is also at Breitbart now. And Boyle had been indexing all of this. He'd been writing down, oh, here's the lawmakers who say this. And Eric Holder freaked out. Eric Holder sees Neil Monroe. Neil is trying to ask him a question. He's like, hey, Neil Monroe from the Daily Caller. And Eric Holder gets in his face and he said, you are doing this. You, meaning, how dare you talk to people who are against me? How dare you gather their names? How dare you make it appear that anyone could be possibly opposed to me? If you go look up pictures of Eric Holder and Neil Monroe, just you can Google them or whatever your favorite search engine is. You can see pictures of Eric Holder sticking his finger right in the face of Neil Monroe. This is the attitude at the upper echelon of the left. Trump doesn't do this. Trump treats people with respect, including the people who disagree with him. And the people who attack him, yes, he counterpunches. That's true. That's true. But he is, as you know, a counterpuncher. But this leftist attitude, how dare you, sticking their finger in the face. This is, that's Joe Biden and Karine Jean-Pierre's approach to people like Peter Doocy. How dare you? Get on board. So Sean O'Brien said that when Kamala Harris became, again, the Teamsters president, Sean O'Brien says when Kamala Harris became the nominee, she was just handed it, the nomination, as Joe Biden was yanked from the race by his party. She agreed to meet. The campaign agreed to meet with the Teamsters, but they barely wanted to give them the time of day.
So fast forward, she finally agrees to come after we were putting pressure on her, basically, because I was doing interviews all over the place saying, we haven't got invited to the DNC. They haven't accepted our invitation for her to come to a roundtable. So she comes to the roundtable. Same format, same questions. Rank and file members are asking her questions just like they asked every other candidate. And they were trying to negotiate with us. She only wants to answer 3 questions. We're like, there's 16 questions here. So she answers 3 of them. And on the 4th question,
idiots,
one of her operatives or one of her staff slips a note in front of me. This will be the last question. And it was 20 minutes earlier than the time that it was going to end.
Come on.
100%. And so, you're there trying to get our support. And her declaration on the way out was, I'm going to win with you or without you.
She thought that or said it out loud?
She said it out loud.
That's insane.
So
that's crazy behavior, actually, if you think about it.
It was insane behavior, which at that point in time, I knew she was going to lose.
It's also self-destructive. Can you imagine if you're the kind of person who's been on a political campaign or operated one or tried to advance the interest of your candidate to get them elected, and so you go to a key constituency and then you treat them like garbage in a theatrical way? You think that's going to go well for you? You think that's going to result in an advantage for your candidate? Why did you sit down at all then? Why did you agree to do the sit down at all? Come up with some sort of creative excuse for why you can't do it. But they didn't do that. Instead, they straight up insult the Teamsters. They sit down with them. They answer 3 questions out of their 16. They get nowhere near the allotted time. Some whiny little staffer with a Napoleon complex pushes a note right in front of Sean O'Brien and the Teamsters and says, this is the last question. We're not doing any more after this. Just treat them like garbage all the way through. All the hallmarks of a losing campaign. Again, allow me to compare this to Trump. Trump is not like this. Trump sits down with the National Association of Black Journalists, which is an all-out slugfest as he gets treated like garbage by 2 of the 3 people moderating it on stage. They had 3 moderators to handle Trump. And Trump goes the distance. Trump goes the distance with them. And if I recall correctly, I think that event started late because of technical problems, and he still stuck around, and he did it anyway. but he made sure everyone knew that they had kept him waiting. And how many of these podcast interviews did you see with Trump during the campaign where he sat down? Normally, if you're dealing with the most sought after person in the world for an interview, which they were, Donald Trump, you don't allot hours of time for him to do one interview. You know, that's not usually how this goes. But maybe it was Barron Trump's influence, perhaps. Somebody was like, hey, you should do this. And not only did he do the interviews, he would go the distance. I remember watching some of these interviews with Trump during the campaign, whether it was with Andrew Schultz or Theo Von. He would have these moments where the allotted time had already concluded. We're out of time. But he's like, I'll just keep going, he would say. He would wave off his own staff. He goes, I'm enjoying it. Let's talk about it. Let's keep getting into these issues. And he would stick with it. Now, did that upend other elements of his schedule? Definitely. Yeah, it's an important campaign, and you got to try and stick to the schedule as much as possible. But Trump went with his instincts. How did that work out for him? Perfectly. He won the election. Contrast that with Kamala Harris and her campaign. They were so scared of letting her talk, they wouldn't let her answer a 16-question survey from a loyal Democrat operation like the Teamsters, at least traditionally. The writing's on the wall. The writing's on the wall. And now I see all of this talk, this chatter about, will Kamala run again? Will Kamala do it again? She's kind of interested. Maybe she'll run for president again. Good. Do it. She's not going to get better in 4 years. She will not get better. This is not something that she's going to improve. Is she capable of improving it? Yes. But she's mediocre. She won't improve it. She won't put the work in. She'll show up just as entitled and stupid as the first time. So do it. Go for it. And it is interesting to hear Sean O'Brien kind of relive all of that. Like, what leads to that moment? And where he's on a stage for the Republican National Convention and not the Democrat National Convention. And what led to that is he was treated, and his membership was treated with respect. Also, all due credit to the Teamsters members who made this happen. Because while Sean O'Brien seems like a perfectly nice guy who's advancing the interests of the union, it really was his membership that led him to this. That led, remember, they didn't even make an outright endorsement in the campaign. They just abstained from making one, which was unusual. And the reason for that was because the overwhelming majority of their members supported Trump, because they saw in him the guy who was going to support American workers. Which leads us to today's debate on what's going on with immigrant visas, in particular H1B immigrant visas in the United States, as some big American corporations rely on foreign labor rather than American labor in order to produce their goods and services at a much lower price than they would pay an American. We're going to talk to Neil Patel about this coming up at 5:30. Neil has some great views on the subject, fascinating views on the subject, and the reforms that might be made in order to improve this system for everybody, whether or not you're a foreign worker who's trying to work in the United States and have a lot of skill, and you're the kind of person we want to welcome, and most importantly, for American workers. We'll talk to Neil about that in just moments. The left really, really resents free speech. Not big on that. They hate when there's an open conversation because they're afraid they're going to lose. And so they've been fleeing social media platforms with open conversation like X in order to create their own left-wing only playgrounds. In fact, there's one that's been developed called Bluesky, and Bluesky has not been going well. A lot of prominent lefties have quit X for Bluesky. And now the place is super toxic. I don't know if you're surprised by this at all, but it is. There's all sorts of child predation going on there. Reportedly, they have a huge problem with really disturbing content all over Bluesky. Additionally, death threats are all over the place, and fake news stories. There's a headline for you here today, Daily Caller. Left-wing journos' new anti-Twitter playground is rife with death threats and fake news. They've been departing Twitter en masse for the new Bluesky platform, with many of them lauding it as a kinder, gentler alternative unburdened by the presence of Elon Musk. Users of the new platform, however, are proving to be guilty of the very same behaviors they claim drove them away in the first place. Bluesky, initially created by Twitter founder Jack Dorsey as a decentralized evolution of his original creation, has evolved into a landing pad for dissenting liberals looking to protest Elon after his 2022 acquisition of Twitter. It's a who's who of celebrity left-wing journalists and celebrities and even whole news outlets, from Don Lemon to Mark Hamill. That guy's pathetic. Even The Guardian. They've all departed Twitter in favor of Bluesky. Users of that platform said that they were leaving because they didn't like all the, quote, misinformation, extremism, and bigotry on Twitter. Guess what happened? They took it with them. It turns out they were the sources of all the problems, and they took all those problems with them. There's a podcast hosted by a lefty called Allison Gill. The name of the podcast is Mueller, She Wrote. And she just posted a conspiracy theory about Elon Musk and the recent drone sightings in New Jersey just a couple of days ago. She wrote, "I'd bet money it's Elon who is deploying the drones and starting right-wing media GOP UFO rumors because it will make him more money somehow," she wrote. "Maybe it will get him Starlink contracts with Space Force, or maybe he'll sell UFO merch. No idea, but I'm keeping my eye on it." You keep your eyes on it, sweetheart. That's really funny. Anyway, isn't that great? The world really is healing. People are self-deporting to Bluesky. And it's a hellscape now because it's dominated by lefties. Who could have seen that coming? Coming up, Neil Patel will be with us, co-founder of the Daily Caller. He's Tucker Carlson's business partner. He's got a lot to say on this immigration debate that's breaking out on the right, as some people debate the merits of H1B visas and what's good for American workers. That's priority number one. We'll talk to Neil about that in just moments. Well, hey there. Good afternoon. 535 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can help us do it, as always, at 888-630-9625, 888-630 WMAL. I know people are getting a little toxic, but I think it's a healthy debate. Just how much legal immigration is right for the United States? How can we tune it so it's right for Americans? And how can we get rid of the corruption that's messing things up for everyone? For more on this subject, I want to bring in Neil Patel now. He's the co-founder and publisher of the Daily Caller, the Daily Caller News Foundation. He's involved in ALP, the Tucker Carlson Network. He literally does it all, and he takes time off every so often to speak to us here on the program. Neil, great to talk to you, sir.
Hey, Vince. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. Great to talk to you. I know I saw this. So yesterday, just to set the frame again, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy came out. And we're talking about how important it is to be able to bring in international talent from all over the planet to work in the United States to improve American companies. And I think Vivek Ramaswamy kind of lit the big firework yesterday by saying that we really need to address one of the elephants in the room, which is that American culture, in some cases, has been prizing mediocrity over excellence, and that has had a debilitating impact on the American workforce. What do you make of this whole debate? Who's right, who's wrong, and where should we go from here?
Yeah, man, I think Vivek made a point that's not crazy, but I think he missed a bigger point, which is the system we currently have for high-skilled immigration is completely broken. It only helps big business. It doesn't help America. It doesn't help American workers. And what I mean by that is we bring these people over, and we bring them over on these, they call them H1B temporary visas. Mm-hmm. And because of the way the system's structured, any of the people from big countries, and most of them are from India and China, get stuck in a backlog where they can't switch from that temporary visa to like a permanent green card and then eventually citizenship for a number of decades. And that whole time they're tied to whatever company brought them over. They can switch sometimes, but they still have to be tied to some company. They can't start their own business. They can't invent something and, come up with something where they end up employing hundreds of Americans. They're just tied to a business. And what that does, if you think about that for 1 second, these companies have these essentially indentured workers from foreign countries, tied to them. What does that mean? That means those people can't negotiate for benefits and salary the same way an American can. And what does that end up meaning is the American worker is going to be discriminated against in favor of this basically indentured person from a foreign country. So it's a totally broken system from the perspective of like what's good for America, which is obviously what I think we should think about first, and also from this perspective of these American workers at the same companies who are competing with these indentured, laborers, basically.
Right. So those are employees that lack a lot of leverage. And I've got some people posting on social media to me today, pointing out that in some cases these H1B workers are paid what we would consider to be higher end salaries compared to a lot of Americans. But I think what's missing from that assessment is that they're still getting paid at a cut rate versus what American workers who have actual leverage in the job market might be paid.
Yeah, I mean, like when a company applies, they have to show that like their jobs that they're posting for have like a competitive rate, and the Department of Labor actually has like various for every kind of job you could imagine a rate listed, and you have to meet that. But over the years, when these people are in this backlog forever, they're not going to get raises at the same level or benefits at the same level as Americans, and that means that they're going to be basically better for these companies than an American, or they're going to draw down the wages and benefits of a comparable American. So it's not, and they can't start their own business, which is what we should, if you really want to bring super skilled, talented people here, you want to encourage them to start a business and end up actually employing tons of people rather than taking jobs from Americans.
Yeah.
So it's like completely broken. The only ones who benefit are these big tech companies, mostly big tech. And then there's this whole group of Indian contracting companies that, consulting firms that bring in just the most numbers of these H1Bs, and they're directly just taking American jobs. So it's not good for America,
right,
the current system. I don't think Vivek and Elon are wrong that it's smart to bring really talented people here. I think we should. Like there's 1% of the most talented people in the world. They're not all in America. And if we could draw some more of them to America, it'll be good for us. They'll start businesses, they'll invent things, but not into this current broken system, which ends up just helping big tech get cheap labor, and it hurts American workers. That's just totally broken. And so my beef with Elon and Vivek for this debate is you should start with that. You should start with how broken the current system is and how before we bring in anyone else, we got to fix that.
Okay, the H-1B system is, as I understand it, and Vivek has actually attacked it before in the past, is a lottery system. It's not a pure meritocracy. It's not like you take the top 100 foreign workers and say, okay, now you get jobs in America. It's a lottery. There's randomization to it, which means that we're not actually curating for the very best, are we?
No, I mean, you have to show that they have certain skills, but it's not like we have other visas that are in different categories for like really high skilled people. H1B, like any coder can get an H1B, many people can get them. So it's not really scraping what I was saying we should do, which is like, bring in the best of the best from the rest of the world. It's not really doing that either. Yeah, that's totally true.
Okay, and then the other categories of visas, like there's like an O1 visa for extraordinary international talent. Are you for keeping that? Do you think that's a good idea? We should be able to kind of handpick people who would help improve the United States.
Yeah, but I think what we should do is handpick those people and then very quickly move them to give them all the rights that the same American has, because that way they're not undercutting the American worker, and that way they can start their own companies. And so I think if we pick them the right way and find the truly talented people, we should bring them over here for sure. But we should very quickly move. I don't like this idea of a temporary worker, because a temporary worker isn't a real American, and they're competing with other Americans. So we should, if they're worth bringing over here, we should give them the same rights and put everyone on the same playing field so they don't have an advantage over the American worker.
Yeah, I will say just as a piece of basic analysis of the media environment, I do like that this debate is happening. I think it demonstrates something about the right, which is that these ideas matter, and people on the right like debating them, that there isn't some sort of lockstep cult on this subject, and that the people who are your allies on so many other issues may get it wrong occasionally. I think there's something very healthy and useful about this debate that we wouldn't be having if Kamala Harris were on her way to the Oval Office.
Oh man, 100%. And also, like guys like Vivek and Elon Musk have added so much to our coalition. Like, we would be in trouble without those guys. I think the people who are saying like they're not real, or this proves they're not real, or they're not really on our side, that's just crazy. If Elon Musk didn't buy Twitter and do all he did and take huge risks to do it and overpay to do it, we wouldn't have anywhere to speak freely. So, and on many other issues, I think they're adding an important component, and it's great. And so I'm not like attacking those guys in any way. I think they got it a little wrong on this one, but in general, like, is our coalition, would we have beat Kamala Harris without all these new people in the coalition? I don't think so. And are they adding a lot? Yeah, I definitely think they are.
Yeah, and we shouldn't just dispense with them just because you disagree on one thing. I'm curious, do you have any disagreement with Tucker on this issue at all? You're his business partner, college roommates. Do you guys share the same view on this subject?
I think essentially we do. I think Tucker's where a lot of conservatives are, which is the immigration has gotten so out of control, especially on the illegal side, just the sheer number of people coming in every year and our inability to assimilate them in a way where we become more of a cohesive American culture again, which is really important, it's a real problem. And I think it's making them all want to just pause, on this whole thing. And I understand that in many ways, but I think one of our big advantages in the world is a lot of the most talented people throughout the world would still love to come to America. And I do think as long as we pick them the right way and run the system the right way and do it at the right level, it can't be, you can't bring in 20 million people a year. You just can't. But
it's not sustainable.
If we pick the right people and do it at the right level, it's a great thing for us. Where would you rather have the next amazing inventor invent something here, where start a company and end up employing thousands of Americans or tens of thousands, or some other country? We'd rather have it here.
Yeah, it's all about getting it exactly right. And the point that you just made about all the foreigners who have been pouring into our country illegally or been trafficked in by the Biden administration, today you see all these reports on homelessness is now at the highest level it's ever been in the United States of America. And the Department of Housing and Urban Development just told reporters today the reason for that, they emphasized, was all of these foreign nationals that were let into the country. And it's like, what? This is you did that. The very administration that's now saying, well, this homeless problem is really bad. That's because of what we did.
It's totally bonkers. And, they like to say, like, people who worry about these things are hard right or right wingers. It's just any normal person knows that's crazy. What we've done the last 2 years, what they've done, is completely crazy. It's a big reason Trump won this election, because anyone who's normal looks at that. As long as you have like half truth in front of you and not some weird media spin on it that tries to turn it into a pretzel, you just look at it and this is insane what we've been doing. And, we need to fix it, obviously.
Yeah, totally. All right. Neil Patel, co-founder, publisher of the Daily Caller, Daily Caller News Foundation, and so much more. Sir, great to talk to you today, as always. Merry Christmas again.
Great talking to you, Vince. Have a good day, man.
You too. The all-powerful Neil Patel. Always good to chat with him. By way of disclosure, I have been an editor at the Daily Caller for many years, and Neil is a great friend and a really, really smart guy. So always grateful for him to jump on the program. We got Michael in Woodbridge now on line one. Hello, Michael. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. I don't know if I had to step away for a minute, so I may have missed the contact point. Your first guest took the whole thing with Vivek as an attack on the American. Mm-hmm. I heard it as a condemnation of the American system. And in a system where the city of Baltimore and the city of Chicago in 22 and 23 both had to admit in court that they've been graduating students who couldn't read at third grade level for about 20 plus years. Well, in that kind of a society, it's pretty damn sure you're going to get mediocrity out of a bunch of students that can't read at third grade level. And I kind of tying legal immigration and illegal immigration together, it's amazing to me how the left has yet to understand the most basic principle that whether it's 5 million, 15 million, 20 million illegal aliens, every one of them has to eat, sleep, and poop somewhere. Mm-hmm. And every one of them is therefore competing for places to eat, sleep, and poop with Americans. This is not complicated. It is not about whether the color of somebody's skin, the language they speak, the religion they practice. This is math. When they design a neighborhood, they actually plan on how many people will sleep there. You know why? That tells them how many people will poop there. That tells them how much sewage they have to handle on a daily basis. And guess who handles sewage? H1B visas. It all ties together. And if you don't have an education system that can compete in a global market directly with those individuals that we are importing, we will continue to be dependent upon cheap labor that is essentially slaves who can't do anything about their conditions, and we will be sacrificing our children in the process.
Yeah, it's sort of kind of the worst of all worlds, because what you have is, to your point, to your excellent point about students graduating out of Baltimore schools with an inability to read and just saying, okay, let's just push them through the system. It doesn't matter what they actually achieve. That's a huge problem. The other piece, of course, is the government incentivizing a rig employment structure that makes it so that you can get foreigners at discount rates at the expense of Americans who are qualified, who did do the work, who are capable of doing those jobs, but instead they cost too much because they compete in an open market. And so all of that combined creates exactly what you're talking about.
If I could, Vince, one more thing to tie together with the illegal versus legal aspect of it. I'm a contractor for 30 years. I mean, a general remodeling contractor. I don't build them, I just make them better. I'm no longer allowed to bring a 16, 17-year-old kid onto the job and have them hump bricks all day. Just to learn, to show up, just to learn. You get one lunch break, just to learn those basics. I can't do that anymore. Why? Because government solutions. Why do people hire illegal aliens to help them with contracting? Because they can't hire a 16 or 17-year-old kid.
You know, I remember being 16 and thinking I'd kill for a job. I just want a little bit of spending money. I want to be able to do something, get some cash, and you go out there and you start hustling, looking for something.
To go chase the girls. That was it. You know, we had to have a way to. You had to put gas in that car, baby. It don't run on hope.
That's exactly right, Michael. Thank you for all the truth you're spitting today. I appreciate that. There he is, and Michael hit the quota. I don't think I've used the word poop on the air this year. So Michael hit the quota in a single phone call, which again, impressive. A couple quick media headlines for you. You see that Ainsley Earhart and Sean Hannity are now engaged over at the Fox News Channel. How about that? So they're making it official. They're getting married. I don't know how long they've been official or public about their relationship, but there you go. So that's a big deal. Although I did see something that she's going to keep working in New York and he's going to keep working in Florida. So I'm not sure how that works, but I would recommend for your marriage, you should figure out a way to live together. That's usually better for a marriage. So we'll see how it goes. Congratulations to them on their engagement. Then we also get this news just from the last 30 minutes or so. The New York Post, among the many places, reporting that Greg Gumbel, the legendary sports broadcaster, has died at the age of 78 after a battle with cancer. He called the NFL for CBS for decades. He was the network's host during March Madness as well. They announced today, his family did, that he died after a courageous battle with cancer. And they announced the passing of their beloved husband and father, Greg Gumbel, dead at the age of 78. Rest in peace, Greg. It's amazing. So that's that story for you. And then one other piece that I wanted to tell you about today, which is so crazy to me. The New York Times today has written an entire piece on how Donald Trump compliments the looks of other men, and they're psychoanalyzing him. They want to know why it is. Apparently, he had complimented Prince William recently at the opening of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris this month. Trump had said, according to the New York Post, quote, "He looked really very handsome last night. Some people look better in person. He looked great. He looked really nice." And I told him that, said Trump. That's the kick. That's the opening act. That's the curtain raiser on the whole piece. And the New York Times psychoanalyzes just how insecure Trump is, that he has to compliment the looks of other men in order to make himself feel better. It is ridiculous. And a full-blown investigation into why Trump pays people compliments. Meanwhile, still no investigation into why Biden sniffs children. I don't see that anywhere. Psychoanalyzing Trump? Oh, yeah, we'll do a lot of that. Biden? Oh, no. That's a cover-up. That's a full-blown cover-up. How about it? Hey, the great one, Mark Levin, is up next here on WMAL, and I'm back with you next week for a busy New Year's week here on WMAL. Don't miss a minute.